What if everything you've gone through was meant to sharpen you, to strengthen you for a higher calling? Don't ignore this. Ask yourself, are you ready? Ready to face the reason why God separated you for something greater? You have always sensed the weight of separation like a chasm that could not be crossed, and perhaps it made you question your place, your value, or even your worth in the eyes of God. But this was never a sign of abandonment. It was a divine design, a deliberate act from the Almighty to carve out a space where He could mold you unhindered by earthly ties. The absence you felt wasn't an oversight but a form of refinement, a fire through which your soul has been tested. He separated you from your mother not to deny you love, but to set you apart for a love far greater than what the world could offer. In that absence, He speaks to you more clearly, more forcefully, drawing you into His purpose, unclouded by distractions. You were never meant to be like everyone else. Your path was always destined to be different. From childhood, when others around you found comfort in the embrace of their mother's care, you may have found yourself standing alone, questioning the ache of isolation. But isolation was not weakness. It was a form of strength. It was like a warrior trained in the wilderness, stripped of comfort so that only the essentials remain. You were being honed for something higher. The very separation you wrestled with has been your spiritual forge. God sees the love you've longed for, the connection you may have envied in others, but this was filled not by human hands, but by divine intention. He needed you to be free from the confines of earthly attachment because your mission goes beyond the typical bonds that tether most people. Your calling requires a different kind of strength, the kind that is not cushioned by constant affirmation or maternal warmth. Instead, you are sustained by the immeasurable, unshakable force of God. You were never meant to follow the crowd or to be held by the same bonds that hold others. He separated you to sanctify you, to claim you as His own, untainted and unburdened by the world's definitions of love. What you may have seen as absence, God saw as His presence. What you thought was isolation was your invitation to step into the fullness of who you were always meant to be. God saw the emotional and relational distance not as a sign that you were chosen. This distance is not a sign that you were abandoned or neglected, but what you endured was part of God's refining fire. The conflict, the strained words, the unspoken coldness, they were all tools, like a hammer against stone, breaking away the parts of you that were not meant to remain. In this divine chiseling, He has shaped you into something stronger, something more resilient, something capable of withstanding the storms that will inevitably come. Every argument, every cutting remark, every manipulation was a lesson in standing firm. You were not just hurt, you were sharpened. The battles you've faced with your mother have been some of the fiercest of your life. They were not mere disagreements but cosmic clashes, struggles between what you are called to be and what the world would have you remain. You may have felt the sting of criticism that seemed to have no end, the constant manipulation that twisted your emotions, the emotional sabotage that left you questioning your worth. But these were not random hardships. Each of these wounds was intentional, a part of God's plan to prepare you for something beyond the ordinary. Through these scars, you gained an armor that others do not have. While others may falter under life's pressures, you have already endured the heat of the furnace, and it has only made you stronger. The resilience others cannot match, the trials you've endured, the lessons you've learned, and the understanding you've gained at your core. Through this struggle, He has made sure that you understand that at your core, through this struggle, He has made sure that you understand that at your core, you are uniquely prepared for your calling. This separation, this lack of attachment to your family, particularly your mother, is not a mark of failure. On the contrary, it is a sign that you have been chosen for a purpose that exceeds the ordinary bonds of human relationships. Others may find themselves tethered to the emotional chains of toxic family ties, bound by expectations and unhealthy dynamics, but not you. God has given you the freedom to walk a different path, to rise above the entanglements that hold others back. The emotional distance you felt is more than just a painful reality. It is a clear indication that you have been set apart for something extraordinary. Through every wound, every tear, every lonely moment, God has been preparing you for a destiny that few can understand. You are called to step into a divinely chosen path, and separation is the very evidence of your greatness to come. The emotional distance, the toxic and emotional manipulation, the family's emotional sabotage, the wounds. All of these have been tools in God's hands, shaping you into a warrior capable of withstanding the storms and trials ahead. You were not chosen for an easy path. You were chosen for a path that requires resilience, one that demands you break away from anything that might weigh you down. Jesus separated from his own earthly family and knew the pain of being misunderstood by those closest to him. Like him, you are called to a higher purpose that will often create a gap between you and those you love. This division is not an accident. It is a divine wedge that splits you away from the ordinary, the expected, and the earthly, so that you can ascend to the extraordinary purpose God has for you. In every moment of your life where you sought validation from your mother and were denied, you have been trained to find your worth in God alone, and not in any human relationship or even from family. True value comes from your Creator, and through this struggle, He has made sure that you understand this at your core. The division within your family, especially with your mother, is the clearest sign that God has set you apart. You are not meant to stay within the confines of earthly relationships that cannot contain your purpose. You are called to something greater, and the separation is God's way of ensuring that nothing holds you back. Every tear, every heartache, every conflict, every cutting remark, every emotional sabotage. These were the anvil on which God hammered you into a warrior, one who can withstand the storms and trials ahead. You were not chosen for an easy path. You were chosen for a path that requires resilience, one that demands you break away from anything that might weigh you down. Jesus, separated from his own earthly family, knew the pain of being misunderstood by those closest to him. Like him, you are called to a higher purpose that will often create a gap between you and those you love. This division is not an accident. It is the space where God's voice becomes clear air, where his purpose for you becomes undeniable. In this space, you are no longer bound by human expectations, but free to walk fully in the calling that God has placed on your life. Your mother may not grasp the weight of your calling. She may see your path as strange or even wrong. Yet this misunderstanding is part of God's design, pulling you away from what is comfortable and familiar to make room for your higher calling. Her disapproval or lack of understanding is not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of the calling you have been given. A calling that defies ordinary measures and definitions. You were never meant to seek her approval or base your value on her acceptance. God's purpose for you required this separation to ensure that your identity would be rooted in him and not in any human relationship. The division is painful, yes, but it is necessary. God's love for you is too fierce to allow you to be tethered to anything that would weigh you down. Your mother, with all her struggles, her jealousy, or her brokenness, could not comprehend the heights to which God is calling you. Her inability to fill the divine role that God holds in your emotional or spiritual needs was never a reflection of your worth, but a perfect source of everything your soul craves. The separation you feel is not a punishment or an oversight. It is a deliberate removal of distractions that would keep you from the affections and shortcomings of a human relationship. Through every tear and every moment of silence, you have been a step closer to your connection to God, not just a spiritual crutch that an earthly parent never could. He does not just meet your needs. He surpasses them in this space of separation. The separation you feel is not a punishment or an oversight. It is a deliberate removal of distractions that would keep you from fully leaning into the strength and protection only God can offer. What you perceive as emotional neglect or failure from your mother is, in fact, the space where God's presence takes root and grows stronger. He does not just meet your needs, but surpasses them in this space of separation. God's role in your life becomes undeniable. The world may tell you that the bond between parent and child is unbreakable, but in your case, this division is a powerful confirmation of your calling. It is not a stumbling block, but a stepping stone, a sign of your greatness to come. He is not simply a spiritual crutch, but the firm foundation on which you stand, the everlasting source of strength that no earthly relationship could ever match. You are chosen to honor your mother, not because of who she is or how she treated you, but because of who you are called to be. The division between you is undeniable. It was forged by divine purpose, not mere circumstance. God's plan for you required this separation. Yet, Even in the midst of this distance, His word remains clear. You must honor her, not because of how she treated you, but because of who you are called to be. The division between you is undeniable. It was forged by divine purpose, not mere circumstance. Your response to this divine call is a reflection of your obedience to God, not of her worthiness. Honoring your mother, despite the division, is a radical act of spiritual defiance against the wounds inflicted. It is not about erasing the scars and pain or pretending that the emotional distance doesn't exist. It is about rising above the pain and stepping into the calling that sets you apart. It is about choosing to walk in the path God has laid before you. This division is a crucial part of your spiritual growth. It forces you to confront the raw edges of your pain, not in surrender but in victory. It transforms you, teaching you to forgive not because she deserves it, but because you need it. In doing so, you break free from the chains of resentment that would otherwise hinder your spiritual progress. The honor you offer is not for her benefit, but for yours. It is a gateway to the blessings that God has prepared for you. Now is the time to embrace this truth and walk in the knowledge that your story, your struggles, are not in vain. They are a testimony to the work that God is doing within you. You are not defined by the past. You are defined by the divine calling that marks your life. Step forward boldly, knowing that this is part of your preparation for greatness. Share your story, share your growth. You are not alone in this. Let your testimony encourage others so that they too can find strength in their separation and trust in God's perfect plan.